Okay, it is 5 after. We have reached the Miami version of on time. So I guess I'll just repeat some of what I already said, just because some people may have just joined us. But please set your cameras on if you like, and your mics off for the first part of the conversation so you can better hear and see all the panelists. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end, and we'd love to see and hear you then. We've had some requests to record tonight's talk, so we are recording this conversation and it will be made available afterwards on BFI's website. If you have any questions as the artists are speaking, put them in the chat and we'll select from there at the end for discussion. So hopefully most of you are familiar with BFI, but we are a 501c3 nonprofit artist-run curatorial platform. I co-founded this space about 16 years ago with artist Hernandez. And at the time we thought a funny name was just what it was and never envisioned it would have a 16-year history. So here we are today. I don't even know the total of shows we've done. We're probably nearing 100 at this point. We're currently working on a series called Waterproof Miami in collaboration with another nonprofit called Bridge Initiative, where we're highlighting artwork we're producing projects that highlight environmental issues in South Florida. All of our projects are nomadic. Each one is in a different location, whether in real life or virtual. So I hope you follow what we're doing. And I also want to acknowledge that all of BFI's programming takes place on the traditional territory of the Seminole, Taino, and Tequesta people. I also must thank our funders, without which we couldn't do what we do. We are generally supported in part by a Knights Art Challenge grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, and with the support of the Andy Warhol Foundation, the Department of State, Division of Cultural Affairs, the Florida Council of Arts, and the Culture in the state of Florida. The Miami-Dade County Department of Cultural Affairs and the Cultural Affairs Council, the Miami-Dade County Mayor and Board of County Commissioners, and the Coles Charitable Trust. So now I'm gonna read the bios of all our wonderful panelists, and at the end of my talk, we're gonna drop the bios in as well, so you can check that out later in more thoroughness. So Dr. Jillian Hernandez is a scholar, community arts educator, and curator of contemporary art. Her areas of expertise include Black and Latino representation in visual culture, sexual politics, and girlhood. Her work is inspired by Women on the Rise, a project she founded in Miami, Florida in 2004 that engaged thousands of Black and Latina girls in critical dialogues about identity through feminist art. She's a faculty member in the Center for Gender, Sexualities, and Women's Studies Research at the University of Florida. Her book, Aesthetics of Excess, The Art and Politics of Black and Latina Embodiment, were recently published by Duke University Press. Nereida García-Ferraz is currently an artist in residence at the Fountainhead Studios, Miami, and an artist and educator at the Perez Art Museum, Miami. Her work is currently on view in Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, and MoMA PS1 in New York, and will be featured in the upcoming exhibition, Radical Conventions, Cuban Art in America, the 80s at the Lowe Museum, Miami in spring 2022. Her work has also been included in exhibitions at the Drawing Center, New York, and Museum of Contemporary Chicago, in addition to international venues. Susan Lee Chun, born in Seoul, Korea, is an artist and currently lives and works in Miami. Since studying at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, Susan Lee Chun has exhibited widely in the US and abroad, the Herning Kunst Museum, Denmark, Pacific Asia Museum, Museum of Contemporary Art, Miami, Miami-Dade Community College of Art and Design, MoCA Detroit, and many, many more. She's held residencies at the Bemis Center in Omaha, Three Walls in Chicago, and McCall Center for Visual Arts in Charlotte, North Carolina. Her work is currently in many public and private collections, including the Perez Art Museum, Miami, and the Institute of Contemporary Art, Miami. Crystal Pearl Molinary is a visual artist living and working in Miami, Florida. Her work draws from personal narrative to engage in an analysis of cultural practices in identity, nostalgia, heritage, and beauty. She holds a BFA in photography from FIU, Florida International University, has exhibited internationally, and is currently a visual arts educator with the Miami-Dade County Public School System. Her work is currently on view in Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration at MoMA PS1 in New York, and is included in several private and public collections. Independent art curator Amy Rosenblum-Martín is guest assistant curator of Dr. Nicole R. Fleetwood's exhibition, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration at MoMA PS1. Formerly a staff curator at PAM when it was MAM and when I first met her, and the Bronx Museum, she has also worked for MoMA, the Guggenheim, the Met, MCA Chicago, the Hirshhorn, MACBA in Barcelona, the Reina Sofia in Madrid, the National Portrait Gallery in London, and Kunsthaus Bergens, Austria, as well as MIT, NYU, the New School, and the Colección Patricia Phillips de Cisneros. Her exhibition, Ana Mendieta, Thinking About Children's Thinking, 2017 to 18, at the Sugar Hill Children's Museum in Harlem, was an Art Forum Critics Pick. And Jessica Gispert is a visual artist currently living and working in Miami and Cologne, Germany. She received her MFA at the New York University Steinhardt and is completing a postgraduate degree at the Academy of Media Arts Cologne. Her work has been exhibited at galleries and institutions globally, including the Dortmunder Kunstverein, Bonner Kunstverein, Altenburg Museum, Complot, Brussels, and Noguchi Breton in Miami. Gisbert's collaborative group, Gizmo, is currently featured in MoMA PS1's exhibition, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration. Gisbert's work is distinctive for its intuitive and imaginative play with non-traditional art materials such as homemade crystals, bath salts, and stretchable fabric worn at nightclubs that she uses to explore interconnecting themes of identity, spirituality, and corporeality. I am so excited for this and just want to have a very quick introduction to Jillian and the show as it was in Miami. In 2005, Jillian invited me to be part of the Women on the Rise program she was running with MoCA North Miami. Through Women on the Rise, I did visits to the Miami juvenile detention system to do art workshops with incarcerated teen girls. This experience anchors my abolitionist mindset, working towards funding priorities shifting to social services, education, and the arts. This project led Jillian to curate a show of artwork by the artists who participated in this program at BFI in 2007, of which Jillian will do an overview of now. Thank you so much, Jillian.
Thank you so much, Naomi. It's really such a pleasure to be just reflecting on this practice, but also just to be in dialogue with you. Your practice has always been so inspirational to me and like building a feminist movement in Miami and in the Miami art scene. And so I'm just happy to be working with you again. And again, thank you everyone for being present here today. Before I get into an overview of the original show that was up at BFI and of which work is now included at PS1, I have my own really quick acknowledgements that I'd like to make. First, I would like to thank Nicole Fleetwood for her groundbreaking vision in creating the book and exhibition Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, and for her spirited collaboration in including work by the Women on the Rise Collective in the show. It means so much to all of us involved. Her work provides a really important theoretical framework for situating and underscoring the significance of prison art broadly, but also the work that over a decade we conducted at the Juvenile Detention Center with incarcerated girls. And so to that end, I just really want to quickly, and I'm finding my page here, want to quickly just read an excerpt from the book, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, that I highly recommend everyone pick up. It's a beautiful book making a huge intervention. What I find really generative in Dr. Fleetwood's work is the theory of carceral aesthetics. So I just want to quickly read a quote from that, because I think it'll give us a broader context for the conversation we will be having. So Fleetwood describes carceral aesthetics as the production of art under the conditions of unfreedom. It involves the creative use of penal space, time, and matter. Immobility, invisibility, stigmatization, lack of access, and premature death govern the lives of the imprisoned and their expressive capacities. Such deprivation becomes raw material and subject matter for prison art. The creative practices of incarcerated people fundamentally challenge aesthetic traditions that link art and discernment to the free, mobile, white, Western man. Instead, carceral aesthetics often involves rending oneself out of sight, to borrow a phrase from theorist Simone Brown, or being forcibly rendered out of sight to imagine and then clandestinely construct other worlds, ones that speak to and through captivity. And so, in addition to providing this framework of carceral aesthetics, Marking Time also is invested in situating prison art within the field of contemporary art. And it's a genre that tends to be, it's not a genre, it's a form of art making that tends to be relegated to outsider art as a sort of genre or as a space. And what the book and what the exhibition at PS1 are doing is really saying, no, we need to consider art being created in the prison context or in response to the prison context as part of the broader contemporary art world. So the intervention is major, and one that I'm really grateful for, because it also provides a language for what we did back in 2007. I want to thank Amy Rosenblum-Martín for her work in Marking Time and for her steadfast support of the artists in this show, and also just for broader support for Miami artists throughout your career. I'm grateful to Naomi Fisher for graciously offering the Best Fisher Invitational as a space for hosting Mod 11 Discourses with Incarcerated Girls in 2007, at a time when the feminist community work of Women on the Rise was not recognized as being of curatorial significance. 13 years later, see what's up. I also want to thank Lee Pivnik for all of his work in making today's program possible, Lee at BFI. I also want to shout out and extend my appreciation to the artists that were part of the 2007 Mod 11 show. And they included Rosemary Charlone, Susan Lee Chun, Nereida García-Ferraz, Jessica Gispert, Naomi Fisher, Crystal Pearl Molinary, Isabel Moros, Ali Prosh, and Kathleen Staples. I also want to thank the hundreds of girls that we worked with at the Miami-Dade Regional Juvenile Detention Center. And I ask that we take a quick moment of silence to meditate on and send positive energies to the millions of people, children included, who are currently incarcerated in jails, prisons, and detention centers right now. I ask that we also observe the moment of silence for those who have lost their lives to COVID-19 due to the dehumanizing conditions of carceral facilities. So I would appreciate it if we could just take a brief moment of silence. So let's go ahead and show some images. I want to show a few images from the original show, and it was titled Mod 11 Discourses with Incarcerated Girls. We can move on to the next slide. Mod 11 was the name of the cell block where we worked with girls at the Juvenile Detention Center at the time. There were 2 girl cell blocks at the detention center, and most of the cell blocks were for boys, but there were 2 that was specifically for girls. And the girls from the 2 different cell blocks would be joined together into a single mod, as it was called, and that's where we would work with them. And this photo is a photo of the entrance where we would go in to work with the girls, but it was so much more than that. It was very much like this liminal space. It was a space where you had to sort of, as you went through that door, you had to sort of mentally prepare yourself to enter the space. But it was also a space where, when we concluded a workshop with the girls, we would often hang out at that door for a very long time as we walked back to our cars and just process together what we had seen, what we had heard, what we had made together with the girls, how we may have failed in something, how we may have succeeded in something, which makes me want to shout out Anya Wallace from the Women on the Rise Collective, who is here and whose scholarship is theorizing also the work that we did at the detention center specifically. So shout out to Anya. And, you know, it's a space that, you know, with all of the artists here, like we've shared this space as a site for thinking through what we do, so we can move forward. And so I, just to give you all, before getting into more of the show, a picture of what things look like in Florida in terms of juvenile detention. In the last year, there were 11,000 incarcerated youth. Of those, 2,200 were girls or were identified as girls. Overwhelmingly Black, followed by Latinx. And I think, you know, we continue to see how, because girls and women comprise a much smaller portion of you know, the incarcerated population, they tend to be marginalized in broader discussions around prison abolition. And so I'm very much invested in problematizing that erasure, you know, of women and girls from the carceral context. So there is a way in which we tend to think about, you know, police violence and the issue of mass incarceration, imagining, I think, often a male or male identified subject. We can move on to the next slide. And the racial disparities continue here in Florida's juvenile detention system. So overwhelmingly, Black youth are incarcerated. The number of youth, if you see this data of Black youth transferred to adult court, which means that if they are incarcerated, they then serve in adult prisons. That number is disturbingly high. So, you know, the context hasn't changed much. I'm sorry. If I can ask everyone to mute, please. Thank you. If everyone can mute, I would so appreciate that. If we can move on to the next slide. So this is an installation view. This was at Bass Fisher Invitational. I'm sorry, I can't continue with the background noise. Okay. So this is one of the views of the show. And so this show reflected a particular, I believe it was over a summer. Women on the Rise had a rotating group of teaching artists, and some of us worked very consistently going to the detention center, and there was a summer where I wanted to invite artists who weren't necessarily part of the core group of Women on the Rise, but who were active in the community, to come to the detention center and create collaborative work with the girls. And so this particular exhibition was drawn from that summer in which we had artists visit. So in this image, we see work on the corner by Ali Prosh. Those drawings on the corner, work by Rosemary Charlone and by Nereida García-Ferraz. And I never really set out to make an exhibition, to curate a show based on that work. It was just that the work that was created and the conversations that we all had were so rich that I really wanted to share that with the community. So it was never really part of the vision initially, but it came much later. We can move on to the next slide. This is one of the paintings that was included in the show by Kathleen Staples, who is a Miami-based artist. And to me, it was really great to see the range of work that was in the show, because I also think that when people imagine prison art, they tend to, I think, imagine figurative work or very particular types of images. And so we had, abstract work, we had figurative work, we had installation, we had very fantastical drawing. So, there was actually not one image of a quote unquote incarcerated girl in the show. And I really thought that that was so rich, because we were not providing, I think, what might be a more sort of like stereotypical image, or an image that maybe people would be more comfortable with. We can continue. These are images by Nereida García-Ferraz. She had done a workshop with the girls where she had brought them these pages from newspaper that she had spray painted with black spray paint, and she had them create markings on top of that as a surface. And so these are not the girls' works, but these are works that she created in response to what the girls had done. And so that was another interesting thing. In some of these works, the girls' hands are in the projects, and in others, the artists are just responding to their memories or issues that they were thinking about as they were creating this work. We can continue. This is another piece by Nereida that more specifically, I think, indexes the, the actual embodiment of incarceration. So you have this like lush Miami landscape against which this figure is sort of floating in the background. We can move on. Susan Lee Chun created this piece that's in the PS1 show called Peace, Love, Harmony. And this was a really fun project where she had brought them fabric swatches and had them design a textile that they felt would reflect them. And then she interpreted those textile designs into these hoodies that reference their uniforms, but in the inside would be their design. We can continue. These are works by Rosemary Charlone. She had done a project with them where she had invited the girls to, she had brought pillowcases to the girls to use as a surface for making art. And she had invited them to create an image of their dream. Like what is their dream, right? If the pillow is, where you lay your head at night, then what would your dreams look like? And so one of the girls wrote on her pillow property of, and then her boyfriend's name. And so I remember her being really struck by that, and how, and the clothes that they wore, actually, I mean, clothes, you can't really call them clothes, like the uniforms that they wore also said like property of Miami-Dade County. So it was like this really interesting reflection on what it meant for the girls to think of their bodies as properties in both these like gendered ways, but also as subjects who are being controlled by the state. We can continue. And then along with that, she created these really delicate collages that also play with the visuality of incarceration, but also desire and femininity. And then Isabel Moros had done this sculptural work with girls. So she had brought them like all of these materials for them to create sculptures. And she collected those and created these like really cool arrangements in the space, these like sculptural arrangements from the soft sculptures that the girls created. So there was this piece and there were a few others. One was an almost life-size body that was created by these materials too. And then these are a set of drawings by Ali Prosh, thinking really about desire, thinking about fantasy, thinking about more kinds of like conventional understandings of girlhood. And the images subtly play on themes of autoeroticism. And one thing that many of us in the collective talk about too is like how sort of sexuality emerges as a topic and as a practice in the space of the detention center. So I really appreciated that Ali's project brought in that question of eroticism to the show. Naomi Fisher had done a project with the girls inspired by tarot ideology, and so iconography. And in her painting, it was a reflection, like a dreamlike reflection on visiting and working with the girls there. The Gizmo Collective, Jessica Gispert and Crystal Molinary created a project called Miss You Look Like a Bratz Doll. And it was inspired by the girls saying that I look like a Bratz doll, and it was just like this hilarious conversation. But they sort of played with that, and in thinking about their practice, which it was very much a photographic practice, they couldn't take cameras to the detention center. And so they came up with this genius workaround, which was like, well, we'll make paper dolls of ourselves, and the girls will create characters and scenarios, and then we will go out and then act out their scenarios in the world and bring the photos back to the girls. And so that's what they did. So in the next slide, you can see what some of the girls had done with their characters. So this is Candy Girl. She's ready to go on a date, ready to go to the movies. Moving forward, these were collected in and placed into a little tableau that they had created, almost as if it was in a girl's room. So they made a slam book that they had brought back to the detention center, and they put the images together with the girls into the book. And we had girls visit the space. Unfortunately, we couldn't have girls from the detention center come, but we did have girls that we worked with in the community come through and see the show. So those are the girls that you see checking out their project. These are some more images of that project. But yeah, I look forward to having more conversation about this. And I think next we have Amy.
Hi. Okay. Hi, I'm Amy, and I am the guest assistant curator of Nicole R. Fleetwood's, Dr. Nicole R. Fleetwood's exhibition, Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration at MoMA PS1, as you said, thank you. And Nicole kindly invited me to participate in this discussion because of my connection to Miami. So thank you to all of you for having me here. So you, Jillian, already gave a fantastic overview of Nicole's project conceptually. I think I will just dive into a couple of the things that you mentioned a little bit more deeply. So you mentioned that the exhibition, for example, well, first of all, I should say that Dr. Fleetwood has been working on this project for over a decade. So the book, which is, you know, a major book published by Harvard University Press, and the major exhibition that includes approximately 40 artists who are incarcerated or very involved with mass incarceration, either through family members or activism, for example. This is a significant project, obviously, that thank goodness has gotten lots of attention in the press. So to go back to her conceptual framework, we're talking about carceral aesthetics, penal time, penal space, and penal matter primarily. So in terms of penal time, for example, you know, the title of the show is Marking Time, and it brings this image actually that's on the screen right now is some of the many portraits in Mark Lofney's piece that's installed at the very beginning of the exhibition at PS1 now. And these portraits, we could talk about them for a very long time. They're incredible. But one of the things that's important about them is that they were 20-minute portraits. And so the artist, for example, said that it was very, very difficult to, there are about 500 portraits that he's made since 2014. He's incarcerated in Pennsylvania. And these are portraits of his fellow, the people who are incarcerated with him there. And they, oh, okay. Um, yes, okay. So this is a wonderful, actually, I took this photograph, it's a wonderful photograph of the Women on the Rise section of the exhibition in the sort of culminating gallery, the last gallery of the show, with Nereida García-Ferraz's piece on the left, Gizmo's piece in the middle, and Susan Lee Chung's piece on the right. And this is, you know, representative of the work of artists who are coming at mass incarceration from an activist point of view, I would say. And a lot of the visitors to the museum who I've had the opportunity to lead through are amazed by why girls would be incarcerated at all. So maybe someone can address that. Also, carceral space and carceral matter, I think, are really important to go into a little bit. Like the space, there's no representation here of, or very few representations of an actual, like what a cell would look like, because to echo what you said, Dr. Hernandez, that Jillian, that Dr. Fleetwood was really veering away from stereotypical representations of what people, the general public, might imagine to be art made by people in prison and people who care deeply about them and fight for them. But there's also like the penal space that is emotional penal space. So there's sort of like a prologue piece to the exhibition by Tamika Cole that you've all seen as the announcement by PS1 MoMA, where, yes, I don't know if you have an image of that piece, but yeah, okay. And I'm gonna let Nereida discuss her own work because she has time to do that, right? Or would you like me to talk about this piece, which I do generally to visitors?
No, we're just showing the work, but you can feel free to speak about whatever you would like.
Okay, awesome. And then also in terms of penal matter, there's this issue of procurement that Dr. Fleetwood goes into. So like, for example, there's this artist called Dean Gillespie, who's in the beginning of the exhibition, who makes these miniatures. And he felt like, of course, he was angry, as is everyone, for being incarcerated. And he said, you know, the carceral system has procured my life, so I'm going to procure at the very minimally the materials to make the art. And he had to, he made, for example, a miniature Airstream camper that he dreamed of traveling around in, and he actually has a full-size Airstream now that he is out of captivity. But it was made, for example, there's this very important concept that Dr. Fleetwood explains called, it's her own version of relational aesthetics, where the artist would have to make friends with, for example, the guards or the prison staff to get them the materials that they would need to make artwork under the cover of night, for example. So, for example, Dean Gillespie would get the silver lining of cigarette packages to make the silver of the Airstream. And another artist, Jesse Crimes, used hair gel and a plastic spoon to transfer images from publications to make this monumental artwork on his own prison sheets. So this idea of like penal matter is very important because, of course, everyone has to be extra creative if your possibilities, you know, there's no Blick art store inside of a prison. Let's see. So this experimentation, this sort of extreme experimentation is a realm in which Dr. Fleetwood is saying that incarcerated artists have a lot to teach contemporary artists who are free. There's another, I don't know how I'm doing time-wise here. You can let me know. There's another major concept that Dr. Fleetwood incorporates into her book and her exhibition, which is called carceral geography, which has been written about extensively. The best known scholar on the theme is Ruth Wilson Gilmore, whose voice is actually present in the exhibition through the work of Ashley, and now I'm forgetting his last name, but I'll put it in the chat, Ashley Hunt, there you go. And it's just about how prison does not just exist inside the walls of a prison building, but it exists everywhere in terms of surveillance cameras, everywhere in terms of our cell phones listening to us. And also, Dr. Fleetwood has talked about how a lot of the structure of the prison system exists within our brains, actually, so that in one of her many presentations that she's given about this project, for example, a pastor was speaking and he called an incarcerated artist on the phone during the Zoom, and thus the incarcerated person could be on the Zoom just like the rest of us. So it sort of reminds us that, you know, so much of this is in our brain, and we can abolish whatever is going on in our brains about the limitations of incarcerated people. And I could go on and on and on, but thank you so much for your attention to Dr. Fleetwood's exhibition. Thanks.
So next we'll have Crystal Molinary.
I guess that's my turn. Hi. Okay, there we are. So like Jill mentioned earlier, our work with Gizmo was photography and video based. So when Jill invited us to participate in the project and go into DJJ, of course, that was our first like, oh my God, how are we gonna do this? How do we adopt this? We can't take any cameras. Their identities are so protected. How, you know, what are we gonna do to adapt this? So, you know, with these limited materials, we came up with this crazy idea of doing the paper dolls of ourselves and, you know, kind of just focusing on the concepts of the work, right? The flexibility of identity, the nostalgia that goes with it, and how we could get the girls to explore their own identities through like our paper dolls. And that's what we did. So we went in there with our paper dolls, and I think what really sticks out to me that was successful about Women on the Rise in the way we worked with all our groups, and in particular with DJJ, and you guys could probably speak to this and agree with me, is most of the times we went in there and they didn't want to see us. You know what I mean? Like they kind of are over programmed. Like I remember when we started going, like we came in as a church lady was leaving, and you know, they just want to, you know, the only reason they wanted to see us was for the hot chips, right? And I think what we did really successfully was that we didn't force them to participate, right? Like, I feel like so much of their time is prescribed, and like, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. And so we were like, okay, listen, if you don't want to do art, you don't have to do art, just sit there quietly so that everybody else can listen, and we'll carry on talking to ourselves if that's what we have to do. And I think, you know, all of the artists that Jill picked to work with Women on the Rise, you know, our work spoke to something that the girls could relate to, right? So seeing the artists there, having us present, having us vulnerable, and having us kind of let them approach the work on their own terms really kind of made like a really pleasant experience, because so many of the times the girl who, when we walked in, was like, I'm not doing art, I don't like art, I don't know nothing about art. Like they would turn around and they would create like a wonderful project, and by the end they'd be like, oh, I didn't know that art could be like this. So I think that, you know, seeing, you know, their own experiences reflected in the work, I think that seeing that the things that they think about, the things that they feel, the things that they're going through, that they matter, right? That that even the play, even the identity play and pretending you're going out on a date or planning for that and what are you going to wear, that could be art. And I think that was really important about what Women on the Rise did in connecting, right? And then breaking down that wall for a lot of the girls that we worked with. Because most of the time they're thinking art is something unattainable. Art is something in a separate world, right? It's not something that they do. It's something that, you know, rich people do or whatever. And I think that Women on the Rise really helped to break down that barrier and kind of merge those two worlds and open them up to the possibility that they could create work that expresses themselves and that is important and that other people care about. And that's kind of something that I carried through. I worked at DJJ for a long time. I worked with Women on the Rise. And then after I was working with ICA, our program started working with DJJ through the Narratives program. And up until a year ago, I was still going in. And you know, a lot of things didn't change and a lot of things did change. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that I did see change were not in a positive direction. Like when we started going there, we had to figure out how to burn our PowerPoints onto DVDs because they only had like a DVD player. Like we couldn't take it in a computer. So we would burn it onto a DVD and they had this like busted DVD player and this old TV and that's where we would play it and that's where they would see the work. You know, as time went on, that TV disappeared, unfortunately. And a lot of the resources just kept disappearing. But, you know, the work kept going. And I see somebody says, what is DJJ? The Juvenile Detention Center here in Miami. Sorry, I'm using the shorthand. Sorry if I'm talking fast, I'm like 5 minutes. So I think that, you know, going in with these programs and using art as play initially, and then kind of letting that open up and letting the girls get comfortable with us. And then, you know, continuing to go back, like starting off showing our own work and making ourselves vulnerable and letting them ask the questions that they have, no matter how outlandish they might be, or, and just, you know, being real about it. I think that was really, really successful because it kind of, you know, let them take ownership of their understanding of art and of their creation of art. And then it kind of, you know, it kind of said like, okay, these experiences, like the art world and your world are not mutually exclusive. Like they can merge and what you're saying is important. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, 5 minutes, but I think I might've gone 5 minutes. I don't know, I'm a teacher, so I could talk forever.
Thank you, Crystal. Maybe Jessica can go next and talk a little bit more about the project that you guys made. Thank you so much. I'm really upset to hear that they don't have a TV anymore.
Yeah, they don't have the TV. Well, I haven't even been there in a year because of Corona, the virus.
Right.
So who knows what kind of programming they have right now or what kind of resources they have, but no one that I've spoken to has been able to see them within the last year. Unfortunately.
All right, hey, yeah, I guess to kind of just like first off, I just want to thank all of you for having me, Jill, Amy, Naomi, and BFI, and all of the artists around. And yeah, I guess like to kind of, I just want to say that Women on the Rise was a really important experience for me as a young artist at the time. It was probably like one of the first direct experiences learning about the injustices of the penal system, as like what Crystal just described, like all of the crazy situations, like showing up and nothing being ready, or like, yeah, basically, I think what stuck the most with me were just like personal stories from all of the girls whenever we would get a chance to talk to them. I mean, sometimes you'd show up and like you wouldn't even have time with them. Like I remember once, I think we just had to wait there, Jill, like for 45 minutes, and what we had like with them allotted, and, you know, we couldn't even talk to them. I mean, they'd come out of their cell spaces, often spaced out. They didn't have windows in there. They were just completely like, what time of day is it? And that was always so intense and something I'll never forget. yeah, so just like their stories, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, being out past curfew, and then there's like not a parent there to come get you, and just like being, you know, being neglected in the space and outside too. So basically, it was an amazing opportunity to be invited to be part of that, Jill. Like, I want to thank you for that. And it was really cool that me and Crystal got a chance to do a Gizmo piece with the girls and go in there. And we wanted to basically do something directly with them. And like Crystal said, like our work was performative and photographic. So we wanted to do something directly with them. But of course, you know, we couldn't photograph them or record them or do anything of the sort. So we made these paper dolls, and these girls, you know, I remember walking in and we had crayons and markers and nothing else, because you can't take scissors in there, you can't take anything. And we're like, are they gonna be into this? And they went to town. It was amazing. Like, they just kind of created all these amazing narratives for fictional characters that would explore like this teenage aesthetic in our minds. And they did, and this was awesome. And I think it was really cool that we got to recreate that ourselves. And we tried to be as thorough as we could and find the right outfits and like makeup and everything to make their kind of dream come true. And I think that when we went back to put together that scrapbook with them, like that part was really important, because I realized like that making that scrapbook, and as it is for like teenage girls and how it was for me like in middle school, was like very much about friendship and very much about a positive like woman to woman experience, and that they all like dropped what they were doing at that moment to work together, even though like, you know, maybe a couple of them were in a fight like 30 minutes before. Like they just kind of sat down to like not be in that space anymore, to just dream a little bit, right? So that was really cool. And yeah, and I think the piece that that's on the screen and that is in marking time at the moment is like one of my favorites. I mean, all of them are so awesome that we got to, you know, come to life. But you know, this one just exudes mega confidence, you know, like these girls are like, I know I'm fine, what about you? You know, like, even though, you know, you're kind of like totally oppressed in this insane situation that you're in as like 14, you know, 14, and still somewhere in there, like, you know, you're awesome. And that was awesome. So basically, just to quickly say, just to wrap up how we made that piece, because that's kind of funny. Like Chris and I are like, all right, we need to bring this to life. We went to the Opa-locka flea market. If you're from Miami, I don't think it exists anymore, does it? I just recently moved back, so I don't know.
Opa-locka still exists. This was Flea Market USA. That one is
okay, it was Flea Market USA. Thank you. It's been a while. Got those airbrushed, and then we went to Walmart photo studios. And did we actually get prints made of them, or did we kind of do some kind of?
I think we just like photo bombs kind of in the studio. Like we went in and we were like, here's our cell phone, like take a quick picture, and then we were like, bye.
Right.
Yeah.
So I feel like also,
Yeah, like you guys are so short on all the.
So, oh, sorry, I thought someone was commenting. I just wanted to say, like, yeah, it's kind of hard to blow that one up into a large size because it's going to be really pixeled due to like the technology at the time we were allotted. But yeah, but that was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jessica. I have a lot of memories of all of that too. Like as all of you speak, I'm having different recollections. Before we move on with Susan, I really want to address a question in the chat from Kevin asking if the difference between art therapists, working with artists versus art therapists in DJJ. I always have to say sometimes or remind people that Women on the Rise was not an art therapy program. We were really, and this is where I think like Dr. Fleetwood's thinking about carceral aesthetics really is so much in line with what we did. we were there to engage girls in the practice of making contemporary art, right? So we were like at high level conceptual level from the moment we walked into that space. So it was very different than I think what art therapists would do. And one thing that I noted in doing Women on the Rise is that the girls were like, it's almost like people don't think you can have like too much therapy, but they had too much therapy in the sense where it was mandated group and individual therapy. The girls in DJJ were often drugged, given drugs to calm their behavior. And so what therapy mapped out like in the prison space was very much what seemed to me and some of the others in the collective to be kind of a violent project, a project more about controlling them than healing them. So sometimes what we would do in Women on the Rise would cause a lot of conflict. And actually in seeing and having Susan come next, I remember an earlier version of this project, Susan had them make t-shirts. And we were punished because apparently like some image on a t-shirt reminded the guards of like a gang or something. And that wasn't even at all, you know, what the girls were thinking. So art in these spaces can be something that can both provide an outlet, but unfortunately sometimes would also sometimes get them in trouble like unintentionally, right? And this is something that Anya's work really talks about too, and that maybe she can talk about later. So thank you for that question, Kevin. And we didn't really measure outcomes or impact. We couldn't even really collect the girls' names or anything. So that wasn't really something that we had access to. But for us, like documenting all of this work and all of these projects is really important. And so I'll let Susan speak, and then I'll try to keep tabs on the chat so that after everyone goes, we can continue to respond. Thank you. All right, Susan.
Hi, speaking from a car, so it might get a little loud or not. I think the time that I was able to spend at the DJJ was just eye-opening in the sense that it was a hidden community, to say the least, of young women that voices were, you know, silenced or just had minimal activity to kind of exercise. And, you know, going into the program and being invited by Jill to do this, I was nervous in so many ways because obviously going into a space that was very restrictive with materials, but also thinking about what would be, you know, just, I guess, active enough for them to have a little bit of release time to create something, you know, to have a little bit of dialogue and conversation. And at that moment in time, I was really intrigued by the notion of textiles, but also uniforms in my own work. And, you know, I think it rightfully fed into, you know, going into this context and, you know, thinking about what might transpire from the time being spent with the girls. I think Jillian, it was really interesting to think back to the times of being told like what restrictions were there, what the space is going to feel like, how frigid it is, how cold the girls may initially be and standoffish, and how challenging it was for them to kind of just meet the stranger that walked in and offered them, you know, tools of expression and say, hey, have a go at it, let's create something. And I thought, you know, for the short time that, you know, I would be there, you know, and like like Jessica and even Crystal said, like, you can only expect so much because their time is, it's not their time, even if they're in there to quote unquote, like, you know, rehabilitate, but obviously that's not the case. And I think the time I was, you know, given for this project, you know, thinking about how uniforms were, you know, we all know uniforms to be like this, this way for us to display our identity, to use as a tool to like create these labels or to be able to define oneself or others. And here in this space, they're prescribed and given, and no choice to take on these uniforms and to have no sense of identity. So it's the stripping that was really very calculated and cold, and it really did take a toll on me emotionally. I think still to this day, every time I think about that experience, it feels like there's no way that like this is a logical solution to provide these young women to be captive in this space. And how would we expect anyone to hold on to some sense of normalcy? So I think the time spent there, even giving like a swatch of fabric and markers, which was all we after the t-shirt incident, which I totally forgot about, going in and being like, let's giving them the free space and time to put forth like a design if they were to design something for a garment. And I think those were the only limitations that were given, and that's what transpired. And I think for me, the most important time was the most important aspect of the time spent was just seeing their reactions, but also, laying on their stomachs and just doodling, as I think like young girls do. And I think, but the space, and again, the frigidness of the space, and everyone wearing orange, and just seeing, having left that space and seeing girls having to run, get sweatshirts, and it just felt so, it lacked empowerment. It lacked voice. So I think for me, the garments that were made were a choice to, in some way, not only showcase like the space that they were living for however long that they were there, but the extreme limitations they were given to express themselves. And the only thing I could provide was just kind of this tiny fabric. And I felt like, lining the hoodie would be a, semi, or at most decent way for me to display like they have this, they at least still held on to a little bit of what or who they were for that moment that they were there.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you. And next we'll have Nereida García-Ferraz. There was a question for you in the chat, Susan, but I think you just addressed it. Thank you so much. Okay, Neri.
Hi, everybody. This whole meeting has brought so many memories of that space. First of all, I wanted to thank Jillian for like putting this wonderful group of women artists here in Miami. I would always appreciate like the experience that I got as an artist from sharing all those hours and all those evenings inside the DJJ. And with every girl that I met there, I felt like I grew an inch taller. I became, I think, a very different artist after I had that experience. I have been reading Nicole's book. This book is amazing. It's just unbelievable. And something that really strikes me is that when she talks about like how jail is not home, and how when we talk about our private space, when we talk about home, what is home? The place that you share with your family, the place you sleep, meals, whatever. And the first time that I went to DJJ really completely turned my sense of space around. I had never been in a space that was so deprived. When you show that fence that we will park and meet there with all our house, we had so many stuff we wanted to bring so many things to them. I always remember, like the happiness that I got bringing chips, like with cookies, giving them away, giving them the materials. And even like when we started there, like that small room where we like surrender the car keys, which is like our vehicle, and the minute that you just surrender your ID and your car keys, and you start like listening to all the bus doors, and they go through all the material that we bring, you start feeling deprived. You start feeling like they are stripping away from you everything that we have, So I kept always like wondering at the moment that we got into that gigantic courtyard, I was already like feeling so raw and so ready, like I felt like vulnerable, and I also felt like so strong walking in there and delivering those lessons. And each one of those lessons that we prepare so carefully, I felt like they were like power pills. They were like big Supergirl costumes for them to last one more week. It was such a powerful thing to teach them about women artists. It was such an amazing tool to share with them, like how Ana Mendieta, when she got here to this country, she was seen as a criminal by the system. How how powerful they felt, when we talk about the archetypes of women in Nancy Espero's work. Like each time that we taught them a lesson, I felt like we walk away with like more power, and that we gave them something that they could deal. At least they could find similarities, or like the common ground that we women artists face with them. I felt like I felt there like we were like almost like even that we were coming from some different positions. I felt like there's a moment in those lessons, in those meetings, that we almost got into a plateau of things, that there was a moment of understanding. We were not there to preach. We were not there to know who they, what they did. We were not there to punish anybody. We were just there to share with them the power of women art. And I think that is like, the best thing that we left and that we took from the experience. I'm so proud of the show at MoMA PS1. And the girls produce so much work, and I produce so much work thinking about those experiences. And this particular piece about the girls carrying blue furniture, I would always take with me the heaviness of that sofa there, and those chairs, and like how small they were. How many kids would fit in top of that sofa, doing their hair and eating, and like, so the impact is immense. And all I have is like a deep desire and a hope that someday, we will talk about these things as things that happened in the past. It makes me really upset, Crystal, to like what you were saying, that they don't even have, like a year ago, they didn't even have that old television. So it's such a horrible system. So I'm here, I'm open to questions if we have any time left.
Nereida, there's one question from Mary Baxter. It says, last year I led a creative writing program at a local women's jail in Philly that was cut short due to COVID-19. But based on the positive response from participants, I've been invited back to create, manage, and execute a mural project. And I'm curious if you have any suggestions on how to engage the women for feedback in designing the mural, since we can't meet in person.
Well, the thing is, it's always to, the mural, especially if you're working in a mural inside the space. Is that what she's trying to do? Is she planning
Mary, are you able to clarify?
Yes, the mural is going to be featured at the local jail inside of the space where the women stay.
Okay, okay. Well, you know, it's really important to sort of like bring all these points that we're talking about, like space, body, image, issues of power, what makes the girls, how they perceive power, and sort of like murals are very powerful tools, and they should like be completely like in a territory for them to like get engaged with. So I've always advised like you know, just bring the conversation, talk about bodies, talk about like really bring the, there is no way we can preconceive like how they are or how they feel, but the only thing we could do is sort of like bring that kind of power to them. Just keep it real, you know, and you know, if I can be of any help, you know, I'm available, you know, we can talk, you know, about
Yeah, Neri has done, I'm happy to connect you both. Neri's done a lot of like mural and collaborative work with youth, and it'll be interesting to learn more about your experience, Mary, because one thing that we always noted working at DJJ is that the space had like these unfinished murals, like these horrible, ugly, unfinished murals that were clearly not of the girls' design, right? And so in that space, like this unfinished mural said so much about the failure and the violence and the isolation. So like if you can turn, you know, use this as an opportunity to sort of really use that to its fullest extent, that would just be so exciting, because for us, it's like the murals in these spaces tend to just be like almost more sad than if it was like a blank wall type of thing. So yeah, we would love to be in touch for sure.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
So we're at 7:12. I recognize that we are a little past our a little bit past our time. But so if anyone needs to go, please feel free to go. Speakers or participants involved, we can stay for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions for us. And I want to just thank everyone again, and all of our speakers and BFI for this space and for this conversation.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just curious about like the long-term relationship with these girls. I understood you couldn't really gain any of their like names or kind of personal information, but you know, such a positive impact of art is obviously the community that forms around it. So I'm just wondering if you were able to stay in contact long-term with any of them.
No, we have long-term contact with other girls that were served by Women on the Rise in other spaces, but it was pretty much impossible to do so. And I think that really shows like the violence of the prison industrial complex, really, in that like it is impossible. You know, you can't collect their names, you can't follow up with them, you know. So I think it's precisely like that's precisely the work, you know, of the system, is to isolate populations, and in particular Black populations and Latinx populations. So unfortunately, like, you know, we don't have anything but the traces that we have in these works. Thank you.
I have a question. I work as a teaching artist, and I've worked with the incarcerated youth here in LA County at Juvenile Hall and the camps around here. When you're going in to do these projects, like as artists, are you working with an organization as a medium, or are you working directly with like that county's system to get in, or how is it that you are able to arrange your projects like in such a long term?
So, and any of the artists can jump in here, but I'll answer really quickly. So we did this work through the Aegis of the Museum of Contemporary Art in North Miami. So that's why we had some institutional support that we lost in 2014 after upheaval between the museum that we worked through, some changes in leadership, and the program has never really come back to life since then. And there's been no stated interest to bring Women on the Rise back after multiple attempts by myself to revive it and to reach out to new leadership to revive it. So I want to state that really clearly. So we did it. We did this work through a museum, and we had different partners on the side of DJJ, but staffed their shifts constantly. And one really powerful moment I recall of doing this work at DJJ was with Anya, actually, when we were going there one summer, and we hadn't been at DJJ for a while, so we didn't have a partner there anymore. And Anya was like, well, let's just go anyway. And I was like, how are we just gonna go? Like, nobody's expecting us, no one. And Anya's like, no, like, let's just go. And we showed up and they let us in. And so like, it was so funny because you have this gate, you have all this performance of, like this closed system that's so powerful. And we just showed up and they opened the gate and we went in and we did the work, right? So it's like the Wizard of Oz or something, right? Like it's such a performance, all of this show. And in reality, and it's actually a bad thing that they let us in the sense of like real security for the girls, but it's like, that's not their investment, right? So to me, that was just this moment where walking through made you realize that like you could actually dismantle the system with very little. You just need to stop taking its power seriously, right? And see what happens there. So I hope that answers your question, but if any of the other artists want to add something to that.
But I almost think that if you bring cookies, if you bring the cookies and chips, that you're allowed to go in, it's really crazy. Don't you remember that there was a moment that we sort of lost the person that was the contact, and then we every time we will try to think like who will be there so we can continue. We could not come out with. I mean, it was almost like magic, the idea of going in and giving those lessons, because you're totally right. I mean, the system seems so fierce because of the building and because the monster looks like this gray and so ugly. But then, it's when you look at it, really, it seems like it's weak too,
I just wanted to step in. I see that Kevin asked, did the work continue at DJJ at ICA? And if so, why did it end? Actually, it did, and it does. It's ended now because of Corona. But yeah, up until coronavirus hit, I was working with DJJ through ICA. And that actually kind of ties in to an earlier question that I think it said Marjorie Gordon asked about, have we considered working remotely, like through Zoom with the students? And I haven't personally been working with ICA since the pandemic, but they have tried, not with DJJ because that's kind of been impossible to navigate the, all the back end on there, but with other organizations like Citrus Health, they've tried, and what we've found, or what they've found, is that it kind of doesn't really work, because in most of these situations we're kind of dependent on the staff that's there, right? And that's kind of hit or miss. If you get a guard that cares about the girls and that cares about their experience and their education, then awesome, like they will help, and they will help to facilitate all of it. But for the most part, usually when I go, the guards are kind of like, in their own worlds, and just, like, stay in your seat, don't do this. They don't want anything to do, like at Citrus Health in particular. like they would talk amongst themselves while I'm trying to give a lesson. So if they're already not respecting the art process and the programs process when you're there physically, like through Zoom, it's impossible. So that has been a big hurdle that I think a lot of institutions and a lot of educators have had to try to kind of finagle and like negotiate with, like not being there and working in conjunction with the staff that's actually there or not working. So just to answer those kind of questions.
Yeah, no, and at DJJ, like if they don't have a TV, then forget about Zoom. Like,
yeah, no,
just
impossible.
crazy. So crazy.
Hi, I got a question through the chat just about what other programs MoMA PS1 is offering around the Nicole's exhibition. And Dr. Nicole Fleetwood, it has public speaking engagements about this project almost daily, weekly for sure. So definitely, you can follow MoMA PS1. They have 3 exhibitions up right now, but this is the major exhibition. Follow them on all the social media outlets to find out what the next programming is. And actually Mary Baxter, who chimed in earlier, has been doing an amazing series of interviews with artists in the show. So look for information about that. Also, you can follow Dr. Fleetwood. I could give you all the I'll give you all the handles in the chat that you can follow if you wish. I hope that helps. And also there's a question about any plans for the show to travel. A lot of people have expressed interest in this, and there's nothing public about it yet.
So there's a question in the chat about what about art objects / deliverables for them? Is there anything you're able to leave them with at the end of the project outside of what they made? Unfortunately, no. I think especially at DJJ, it's like whatever memory residue, or I like how Neri put it, like this little, energy transfer that we would have. So what Crystal's talking about with the guards, like it defines so much, and this is actually what Anya writes about in her scholarship, is like the guards would collect the work, right? So we don't know, we don't know what happened. We don't know what they were able to take with them. Sometimes the artwork would be kind of become a taboo object because it might be something they wouldn't want to go back and share at home. So it just really depended. So again, like working at DJJ, I think that's why it's impacted so many of us. Like it makes you think about the ephemerality of art and about materials and everything so differently, because it's like these things just don't hold in that kind of space, right? This idea of taking something with you, what you bring in, what you bring out, like it's a totally different parallel universe in there. Thank you for your question.
That makes me have a question for Gizmo about your paper dolls. When you were doing them, were you able to take some of those paper dolls with you in order to make the t-shirts with, or did you recreate some of them after the fact?
We were able to take those, right? I mean, that's like Jill also has scans of some of those drawings. So that's, yeah, I guess we were able to take that.
Those you were, yeah.
Those particular things to then serve as references. I mean, because at that time, I mean, you obviously couldn't have a cell phone in there to photograph or document them. And we were able to take those materials. I don't know if Crystal wants to add something to that.
That covers it.
Yeah, so some of them up in the actual installation were the original, like hand drawn, and in the slam book too, there were original hand drawn ones. So that was nice. That was like, we were just lucky. Like really, that's all it was. Like that day we were lucky. We were able to bring those back.
Thanks for dropping all those handles into the chat, Amy. And I'm presuming they're all Instagram. I just want to A, clarify that, and B, say, like, if we are winding down in questions, maybe we'll wrap up, but also that I think Lee and I will keep the Zoom open for maybe another 10 minutes after it winds down in case anyone wants to have a slightly more casual chat. And especially because the chat will go away once we close the Zoom. And I want to make sure that there's time for anyone who hasn't had a chance to explore the chat to do so. There's been some really great questions in there and some really great answers by the panelists within the chat, as well as Lee put in links for Dr. Nicole Fleetwood's book and other resources that you can check out. So I especially want to make sure that we don't shut down the Zoom too soon so people can access that.
Thank you, Naomi. And also just to plug my book Aesthetics of Excess tells like a history of women on the rise, and it's linked to the Miami art world and contemporary art scene. So that was linked in the chat earlier. So if you're interested in more about women on the rise, this is the book with work by Crystal on the cover. What's up? Thank you all. I want to thank everyone so much for attending. I want to thank Amy again, Nicole, PS1, Bass Fisher Invitational for being there from the jump, for hosting us when no one else would. Take our little feminist collective. You saw the value in us from day one. Nothing had to be explained to you or justified. And for that, I will be forever grateful, Naomi.
It still boggles my mind that anyone has to be convinced about anything having to do with these issues at all. Like, before I even experienced going to the juvenile detention system with you, it's like, this is crazy, but actually going to it, experiencing it, everything the panelists were saying, I echo those experiences of just these like never-ending locked doors, the moments of just like trying to find ways to connect with people who have built so many walls up so they are protecting themselves, and find ways to access space, access creativity, and know that just firsthand that the systems that we've built are garbage and need to be torn down and reallocated to so many different, more positive ways. Thank you for doing the hard work, Jillian, and everybody on the panel.
And everybody, yes. I also want to thank just all the community that has come through: Kevin, Anya, Monica, Rosemary. I see Catherine Steelman's in the house. Maria Saldana was here. I think Isabel was on here for a little bit. So Women on the Rise was a collective through and through, and forever will be. I think we're just connected through shared experience that I don't think anyone else has, and that we will never have again in our lives. And for that, I will be forever grateful. So thank you, everybody. Brian's in the house. Wow. Lots of love.
I see Aldeve, who is pulling a lot of feminist weight these days.
Yeah.
And I see Miralda, who has been pulling a lot of feminist weight for decades. Good to see you here.
And since there were people joining this till even a second ago, I saw Karen Reif has just entered. Hello. So I just want to say that for people who came towards the end, that we have recorded this and we will add it to BFI's website. So if you came in late and you wish you got here earlier, there will be a chance to see the whole thing on our website later. So thank you for joining us whatever time you were able to come. Well, I'm just going to unmute and babble because there's so few of us left. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's still here. Thank you again to the panelists and everyone who came and simultaneously made me sad and warmed my heart all at once.
If any of you are interested, I'm sure all of you are interested in the activist end of things in terms of like prison abolition, or whatever you want to call it, ending caging of people and maybe animals too. Definitely follow Mary Baxter.
Okay. Can we put Mary's handle in the chat?
Yeah.
I looked her up on Instagram as you mentioned her full name. I already forgot the ISIS.
ISIS
but
Savior.
Yeah, ISIS the Savior. Yeah, BFI is following her now. Looks amazing.
She is a powerhouse in so many ways. And I feel like she single-handedly goes to women's prisons and will wait outside until they'll let her in with PPE for everybody to keep them safe.
Wow.
During the pandemic. And but she has a lot of people rallying around her now. And she was incarcerated herself, as I mentioned.
Yeah.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
And she was just featured on NPR.
Oh, wow.
With her music.
That's wonderful.
Savior.
I love this. I think, are we all still here except for Nereida? We're all so scattered, but it's so wonderful to see all of you guys. It's been too long.
Seriously.
Yes. It has. So we have one last question. I don't know of any groups currently doing this work, but maybe some of the artists do.
I don't know if they're currently working, with the Dream Defenders do a lot. So you might want to look them up because they're really active, and I know a few of them. They've been working up in there.
Since we're just hanging out, I mean, what do you think that I should say, Jillian, to exhibition visitors who are like, why are there 8-year-olds in jail?
I mean, there's not 8-year-olds, but you know, most of the reasons why girls end up in prison is for what's called status offenses. And they're like these tricky codes where basically a status offense is something that you could not be arrested for unless you were a minor. So like not meeting curfew or like running away from home, right? So a lot of girls end up, you know, truancy, whatever, they end up in detention for that. But the overwhelming number of girls who are incarcerated are survivors of multiple forms of abuse. They come from, you know, poor and working class socioeconomic backgrounds. They come from communities that are heavily policed. And so, you know, a lot of feminist criminology has shown that reasons why girls become incarcerated is when they don't follow gendered conventions. So many of these girls will share stories of like, maybe their mom has a boyfriend who's abusive and they fight against the boyfriend, and you know, they get sent to jail and not the boyfriend, right? So I mean, this is why I think so many of us had so much to process after going to GJJ, because you would hear these stories. There was no privacy, so if a girl was on the phone with her lawyer or with family, like you would be overhearing these stories. And it's difficult, right? So I would say like the amount, like crimes, like petty crimes like theft or something, or violent crime is like the minimal. That is not really why these girls are ending up in jails. I mean, it's really just a violent way to contain communities that the state has no investment in their survival and thriving. So status offenses, doing things that girls aren't supposed to do.
Yeah. I want to just pop in because I noticed we had a couple new people join now, and to let them know that we are just in a kind of final wrap-up phase and the talk is technically over, but please stay with us, and that we are going to be putting the recorded Zoom talk on BF5's website soon. And then I wanted to follow up with what you were saying, Jillian, which is that struck me so much too. I remember maybe the second, by the time you know, the first time I went was just such a learning experience, but after that, and kind of had better tools and how to access, oh my gosh, more people are joining. And had better tools in order to access art communication with them. I was doing work with them involving like tarot cards and archetypal imagery, but so many of these girls started doing parts of their drawings that had rainbows in it, and it was very clear that the rainbow was queer flag rainbow.
Oh yeah,
and,
many of the girls were queer.
And once
yeah.
that became clear and could sort of subtly talk about it, you realize that actually most of the girls in the juvenile detention system were queer, and were the reasons that they were in juvenile had to do with that. And that was also just like
yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a
And
lot
again,
to handle, because I mean, it's pure expression of, you know, individuality, or just coming to like trying to come to some terms of who they are and their identity, right? And development of their identity, and to be, you know, consequently like shut down and then silenced and then removed from a situation that, you know, for whatever reasons deemed as they're the ones bringing harm, and isolated at that point. Like, you know, how do you come terms with that? And all that does truly is just, it becomes the largest, you know, in my mind, it's like this experience becomes the largest predictor of future incarcerations, you know, and it boggles the mind, and it makes it, you know, it really does tear up a lot of people inside. And I think if we have no intention in trying to abolish this system, it's not broken. It was clearly, you know, created, you know, to silence and to, you know, it's just built this way. So there's got to be a far more clear, succinct way of giving, you know, empowering these young women, you know, and giving that voice back, or that opportunity back, right? In whatever way. And I felt like, you know, Women on the Rise, like, you know, it truly did in years ago. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that it was over a decade ago that this happened. You know, and we're still living in this whole you know, environment of this type of exploitation.
So I'm hoping that there are ways that you know, maybe we can end on this note, to find alternative non-institutional ways to continue this work in some way. I'm down to co-conspire with anyone who is down to think about ways to collaborate. I'm in Gainesville. I'm not in Miami anymore, but I came to Gainesville to be closer to Miami, and I'm invested in it. And so, you know, I still hold out hope somehow, just like this PS1 show came out of nowhere. I feel like maybe one day we'll have the kind of financial support to resume this work. So I'm just going to speak that out into the universe. Right? Yeah.
And just
Thank
to
you so
reset for
much.
there are
Yeah.
still more people joining, and we're so happy you came, even though we're at the tail end. And we will be putting the recorded version on BFI's website in the near future. And please, if you just joined us, explore the chat. There were a lot of incredible questions and great answers within it, as well as many resources to text and suggested Instagram handles to follow.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks, bye,
you.
everyone. And we'll, again, I'm
Bye.
I'm going to keep the Zoom open for the people who just joined in case you want to check out the chat. Just download it, and we'll be closing out the Zoom in a couple minutes. So make sure you check that out if you haven't.
Bye. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Susan. Thank
Oh,
you
see,
so
someone else
much.
is about to join. I'm going to give that speech
I
one more
don't
time.
know.
Hello, new person who just joined. I just gave a speech that we are ending and about to close the Zoom, but to please explore our chat. We have so many great questions, answers, and resources in it. And we will be posting the recorded Zoom on BFI's website in the near future. I'm sorry that you missed it, but you will have an opportunity to view it in the future. And download the chat quick before we fully log off. Cool.
Bye, everybody. Have a good night.
Have a good night, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you much.
Bye. Bye.
everyone.
Bye. Naomi, I'll hang on for a second.
Okay.
Naomi, I'm about
do a
to
little
join as another
debrief.
fake name to hear the speech one more time around.
Okay, that would actually be hysterical, but not
Do it.
for Naomi. For Naomi.
Literally,
I don't mind.
the most Miami thing to like check in like an hour and a half after it started and be like, how's it going?
I have 5 questions I want to ask.
Well, I also posted the wrong time on my Instagram because I'm on the West Coast.
Oh,
we have another.
That's why you had posted that. I see. I didn't even notice.
And it was only in the body of the text of my post. And then I added a comment, but I don't know if it's when you have like the brick of text, it doesn't let you edit it. And I noticed after I had like 50 likes, so I was like, no, I can't delete it, do it again. So I just added a comment, but then it wouldn't even let me pin my own comment. I'm just like, Instagram.
It was too much.
Yeah. But I put it all, fixed it on all the stories and wrote like 6 p.m. really big everywhere I could. But I'm always just like, there's going to be that one person who comes at 8 p.m. and is like, but it said 8. And I'll be like, oh, I know.
Right.
I'm sorry. But yeah. But I don't know, with all of these, it was great. Every story is interesting. I could listen to every single one of you do an hour talk. So I'm sorry we had to abbreviate everybody, but it was just really so special.
It really
I will
was.
tell you, since we're hanging
fabulous.
out here, like Jessica, I always tell your story, Gizmo's story, when I'm giving tours of the show about the Opalaka flea market and the
Crystal corrected it was USA flea market, but
right. I have to like correct that in my brain now, and also Walmart photo studio. Is that it?
That was it.
Okay, and people love that story. And then I have to say, Susan, that when I tell your story about how after you've made these beautiful hoodies or, powerful hoodies, that the girls weren't allowed to wear them. Like, I think that everybody lets out an audible sigh of disgust in that moment. And it's like one of the most poignant moments in the whole exhibition. And it's right at the end. You guys have a really special place right next to Mary's work. And it's kind of the feminist section of the exhibition, and American Artist is right in the middle of it, Just that I would let you know about the experience.
Yeah. And like none of us have been able to see it.
Yeah, you need like a COVID safe helicopter drop.
Amy, will you do like a FaceTime tour just for us?
Of course.
Oh my God, someone else wants to enter. Should I let
schedule
them in?
What?
I'm gonna let them in. There's still yet another person. And I'm gonna give my speech again. Hello, new person who entered the room. We're so happy to have you. We're winding down, and we will be posting the full talk on our website soon. There's lots of incredible Q&As in the chat, great answers, great resources. Feel free to listen to us babble with each other for the next couple minutes, but also please check out our website in the future. Thanks.
I know how to save the chat. Go to the chat, and on the right in the bottom, there are the 3 dots. You click on the 3 dots and it says save chat.
Oh, no way. Oh, look at that.
Someone was saying that not all participants can. Are we all?
I think I'm just a regular.
We have higher powers.
But then, like, where does it go? Where does it?
It downloads into like a weird, very simplified text file, but you can like search it and look for whatever info you're looking for.
That is so great to know. Amy, it's so good to connect with you.
I want to talk to you, Jillian. I have an idea for us.
I'm all ears. Vamos para allá. Let's do it. Huh?
It's a secret.
Okay. Well, whenever you're ready to share the secret,
we're all like,
I'm all right. I'm like, spill.
You guys always find that keeping things a secret gives the thing more power.
Yes, I do.
I wonder that. I keep asking myself that, especially in this weird age of everything being open as an artist when you're in this time where you don't have access to galleries, you don't have museums, let's say people aren't coming to you as much, and you're working on bodies of work and you want people to know it, but you also know that if you put it out there via social media first, you may never end up in an institution or a gallery with the work because it's been seen. So there's this like push and pull of like, when is exposure not enough and when is it too much? And I
It's
think
about boundaries.
Yeah.
But like boundaries right now are different from how they usually are, maybe, or maybe I'm just becoming aware of them myself in this, you know, for this particular pandemic world.
Yeah.
So many lessons from this pandemic, y'all. It's like so much.
Yeah.
Well, loves, I need to try to eat before I put my 5-year-old to bed.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you for hanging with us, Ride or Die. Susan's
the
like,
car.
Susan's like, no, I actually meant that the car was good. Like, that's why I'm still here. Like notice that Susan was not like, oh, like I'm gonna dip at 7. Like, no, Susan's still chilling. Like,
I sent like a text in the middle of him being like, this one's gonna run long. It looks like it's gonna go on. I have to be here, so you know, hopefully things are, you know, intact inside the house.
You know what?
Well, say hi to Phil for me when you go back in.
Will do.
Yeah, they're so
good
cute.
to see you, ladies.
Good to see you. Thank you so much again, Naomi and Lee. This was so amazing. Thank you, Amy. So good to see you, Jessica. It's been like forever and a day.
Can I just ask if everyone was just like low-key emotional the whole time, trying not to cry?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like flashback city. Like I was so shook every single time I went in with Jillian. You think you're like, oh, I got over it the first time. Nope. Every time there's like a new situation where just some story, some offhand thing just like rips you open to your core, and you just like can't believe we live in a world that would allow this to happen to young people. Anybody, but like in particular young people.
And like girls who are, you know, for all we can say that it's problematic to hold girls up as these like delicate things, one thing that we can maybe glean from the exaltation of girlhood is this idea that they need to be protected, right? Like if we were gonna like think of one good thing, it would be that girls are worthy of protection. And in this case, like not even their girlhood, right? Not even this angelic idea of what that means like protected them. So like thinking about that level of social lack of protection is just so intense, right? I'm not emotional. I think it's because I'm still so full of rage that I don't think I've really dealt with. I think the book in some ways like a release of that. So like the epilogue of my book really gets into the nitty-gritty of the kind of like institutional politics. And I think I'm still in that space. I don't think I've allowed myself yet to really deal with the emotional aspect. I think I'm still just like raging like a banshee inside. Is what's happening. So I'm just still too pissed off, I guess.
Jillian, do you have
an experience on my end, you know?
Yeah. Do you have a preferred venue to purchase your book from?
I think either the press or
the press that published it itself.
Yeah, or
it's Duke, right?
Duke, or I'll put it in the chat. Third House Books. They're like a local Latina-owned independent bookstore here in Gainesville.
Cool.
Like, you know, former Chonga, like who owns the bookstore here that I met, and I was like, oh my god, you're amazing. So I'm gonna put that in the chat.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But one of the most, speaking of emotions, and feel free to cut me off because I realize that we're trying to say goodbye here. But in the exhibition, you know, Nicole calls the heart of the exhibition, like the middle of the exhibition is about solitary and mortality.
Oh God, I can't even like.
And the artist Ojori Lutalo, whose posters I'm sure you've seen, like this most recent article that came out, the one about, it has abolition in the title. I love the perspective of this article. It's just a little more political and philosophical. And it talks about Audrey Lutalo, who was in solitary for 22 years, but he came to see the exhibition. And his, you know, so much of the work in the show is like sublimated in some way or abstracted in some way, which is great. It's like in symbolic language, but his work, it's just like he just spills his guts in these collages that he made while he was in solitary confinement, where, I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, but basically solitary confinement means 23 hours a day you're in this solitary cell. 1 hour a day, you can either take a shower, go outside into a cage to get some fresh air and exercise, or contact your lawyer. And part of contacting your lawyer is that you have access to a Xerox machine, a copier, supposedly to copy legal documents. But he used it to make collages with all this information about what it's like to be in solitary, and he sent it to his American Friends Service representative, Bonnie Kerness, and said, just like put these up out in public, wherever the public will see them most. And just like infinite numbers of these collages that he made that are very direct. To talk about heartbreaking, and then that's right next to Self-Portrait by Billy Sells, who's an artist who committed suicide sort of was killed and sort of committed suicide in solitary while on a hunger strike to protest solitary confinement conditions in California, which are like super notorious. And then anyway, blah, blah, blah. Stories are endless. Thanks to Dr. Fleetwood. These are not my stories. I'll tell her stories. Just
I'm so happy she popped in. It's just really means a lot.
Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely.
it was an honor.
Much love to you all. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Dr. Hernandez. I love all the doctors that were in the room.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thank you again.